Okay, I can see 2 viewers. Can't see anyone else. I'll try and invite everyone. Oh, there we go. Yes. Yes, you're in. All right, great. So that worked, sending it through that way, did it? Not the other way?
Yeah. No, could not see anything.
All right, cool. All right, maybe what I'll do, I'll grab everyone else and see if I can bring them in this way as well, because it looks like we've got 4 viewers and just you and I are in. Hi, I'm Jonathan, by the way.
Hi, Ariane. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well. Okay, so we'll see how that goes. So how did that process go for you then? Because it seemed the last one I sent came through. So was it an email or something that came through, or what was it?
No, that one was just the Google Hangouts invite.
Right. So what did that actually do? Were you on a Google Plus?
Oh, it popped up with the conversation of 13 people.
Right.
And it said, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I said, you're on this Hangout, accept the call, and I said yes.
Okay. Oh, good. All right. Well, you're in, and it seems that you're the only person who's in at this stage. Hang on. I'll just see if I can't get some other people to come in. So we can see 11 or 10 people are viewing. Of the people that are viewing, can any of you enter into the chat? Can you type chats on the right-hand side? Here we go, here's one other person, great.
That was me.
Okay, okay, great. All right, here comes everyone. Fantastic. So I might just wait until all of this kind of settles down and we've got a selection of people in here. I'm still only seeing, what have I got? 4 people in here, but we've got 10 people viewing, so... Oh, here we go. Did I just see someone said they had to download a plugin or something? Is that right? Is that what other people have had to have done?
Yeah, I did that a couple of months ago when I had to use Google Hangouts.
Right, okay. Okay. Okay, here we go. Video, I'm here viewing. Apparently downloading a plugin. Okay. It's required to download a plugin to make it work. I'm verifying my plugin, okay. Hi everyone. Okay, so it looks like people are here, but they have to download plugins to get in or something. So, okay, so maybe you all hear me.
Type it in the comment section. Comment section.
Okay, let me see if people that can.
Just say you can invite Jessica to reach you.
Sorry to everyone that's here. We'll just try and work through some of these issues now, and then we'll get going on the tutorial. Thanks for coming, everyone. Okay. So did everyone that I can see here? So we've got Holly, Asanga, Ariane, and Albert. Have you all had to? Okay, great. So everyone can hear me. That's great. Well, that means we can continue at least. So did everyone have to download plugins or something to get in? Is that kind of what had to happen?
I just had to allow it. Like,
Okay.
I don't know, but I was already set up with Google beforehand, so.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's good. Well, everyone can hear. So to those who aren't actually in the video room at this point, I'm monitoring the chat that's going on in the background, as well as the video conference as well. So we might make a start, and please just keep continuing to try to get in if you need to verify or download a plugin or something. Then that's fine. Do that. In the meantime, we've got 4 people in the room, so that's something. Hi, everyone. Nice to have you in. So welcome to week number 2 of social media communication. This is also being recorded as well. So, hi, Anthony.
Hey, can you see me? I can't.
Yeah, we can see you. Yep.
Okay, cool.
Can you not see us?
I could before. Hold on. Oh, the camera's turned off.
All right, you've just disappeared now.
Okay.
Okay. So, I guess we should probably set some conventions just to make things a little bit easier on everyone. It's generally a good idea to try and mute your microphone when we're in these spaces, just to try and keep the noise down as well as possible. It's pretty quiet at the moment, so that's okay, but I think we can get away with this. But if we get more and more people, we might have to mute our microphones just when we're not talking, so that the room doesn't get too loud. Now the idea of this is to treat this like a tutorial space. So please feel free to comment, discuss, and jump in at any time. I certainly don't want to talk for an hour straight, but I probably will just get us, I'll kick the session off and hopefully try and inspire some of you to communicate and whatnot. Okay. So I guess I'm pretty open to how we run this, but I thought maybe what we could do is just step through some of the theory from this week, do a bit of a recap, go over some of the key concepts that are in the Hinton and Horth book for the week, and then spend a little bit of time trying to just go through if there's any issues with the subject or the assignment or anything like that. So does that sound okay? Is that how people want to run this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, jump in whenever you want, and we can.
Can anyone just before we roll on, can anyone tell me how I can see everybody? It's very disconcerting knowing that you guys can see me, I can't see anyone else.
Okay, there's Albert. Hi, Albert.
Hi.
Anthony, I don't know, to be honest.
Okay.
So, has anyone else got that same problem?
I have to log out.
This is kind of comical. Okay. All right. Well, I'll make a start, and we can, just take it from there. I've also just got to invite someone to the chat. So hang on, just let me copy this across as well. Um, okay, so it looks like we've got 12 people viewing. You guys are in the room, so I think we can say that's a quorum. Let's go. So if you look at chapter 3 as kind of the starting point here. So the Hinton and Hall step through a few key concepts, and one of the main things that they're talking about there is social network sites. Hey, Albert, can I just could you just mute the microphone?
Okay.
Yeah, possible. Just while you're moving about there, I do want you to participate in the conversation, but it's just so social network sites, yeah. How do people understand? What do you understand? Albert, you've got the floor. Let's go. What do you think? What's a social network site? No? Anyone? Anyone want to put their hand up? What do we understand of social network sites? Yeah. How do people understand? No takers? No.
Sorry, mate.
All right.
They're forums for which we can communicate and facilitate, basically networks, communication, and conversation.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. One of the key issues that they start talking about in the book, I guess, is around this idea of an interface between people and space. It's kind of a nice way to think about it. So there's that really nice quote by Boyd and Ellison. Web-based services that allow individuals to, 1, construct a public or semi-private profile within a bounded system, and 2, articulate a list of other users with whom they share a connection, and 3, view and traverse the list of connections and those made by other users. So that's people popping up everywhere. So it's a nice way to kind of think about social network services. So there's a few other interesting concepts that I've taken notes on. I had the readings. So online communities. We started talking about online communities last week around a way of collecting people together. So more than just people getting together, but also that kind of boundary construction as well, in terms of I am part of this community because I do certain things, as do other people in this space. That way we have a collective understanding of who we are within this space, and those who aren't like this are the others, and they're sort of on the other side of it. So that was that's one way to start thinking about social network sites and groups of people. But there was a couple of other groups that they highlight in here, which could be quite useful for some of you as you're working through your projects, particularly coming towards the third piece of assessment as well. So there's a few things there that that you may want to pick up on. So online communities and the shift towards networked communities. So this is a lot of the Dana Boyd work. And one of the key things that that I picked up out of this is this concept of how we shape it, how it's shaped by culture, and we also shape the culture. So an example of that might be a group of people who are operating online around a particular interest that they have. I don't know, cars pops to mind or whatever, and so they bring that offline culture towards that online space as well. So then you're starting to see how people function and operate and communicate within that group in a particular way. That is then taken out of the online space as well, and you know, done in the offline environment, as it were. So so we move into that networked communities. There's a very interesting concept here which they quickly skim over, which has got a lot of scholarly interest over the years by a scholar, Barry Wellman, and they talk about networked individualism there. They've got a really concise description of that. Individuals building networks to solve problems, make decisions, or get support. So you're sort of coming out of that online community, which is, it's great. People are coming on. It's good. So you're starting to see people move beyond that online community, that networked community, that individual groups of users who are sharing knowledge, expertise out of that online community. Much going on in the background. So you're starting to see people move beyond that online community, that network community, that individual groups, and probably.
Can everyone mute their microphone because I can't hear anything?
Much going on in the background. So you're starting to see people move beyond that online community, that network community, that individual groups, and probably.
好像是你退了就没有？
不是我，
还有是吧？哦，因为我的那个麦克风都关上了，视频上。什么情况？
Okay. Okay, I think it's safe. I think it's safe. We've solved that. Sorry, you just to try and avoid that feedback loop that there we go. Okay, I think we're all back. We're all good. Just to avoid that feedback that we had going on there, just if people can mute microphones. I think it's safe. I think it's safe. We've solved it. Okay. Sorry, you just to try and avoid that feedback loop that there we go. Okay, I think we're all back. We're all good. Just to avoid that, could you mute your microphone, please? If you look over on the left-hand side of your, on the top of your screen, you'll have a little microphone icon with the slot. Yeah, just try and avoid that feedback loop that there we go. Okay, I think we're all. There you go. Excellent. Great. Thank you. That solved it. Okay, so we were talking about networked individualism, networked publics. That was the next one. There's an interesting quote there from Dana Boyd on page 41, and the reason why I'm just stepping through this is because I think it's really significant for you in terms of your assessment, which is coming up. These are some really, you do have to align your work back with some of the theory in the semester. So these are sort of some concepts that you might want to think about, which are really good. So Dana Boyd is probably one of the leading scholars in this networked publics kind of area, and she's got this really great quote on page 41. Network publics are publics that are restructured by network technologies. As such, they are simultaneously space constructed through network technologies and the imagined collective that emerges as a result of the intersection of people, technology, and practice. So it's pretty significant to think about it as both people and space at the same time coming together. And so one of the examples that you might think of there is something like when we were talking about last week with events, when something happens. So we might have an election coming up, or in Sydney, the lockout laws, that's really stirring up a lot of interest around the way. So people are coming together as a networked public around that, using social media to engage in a specific concept, etc. I'm going to quickly skip over this because I don't really want to talk for the entire hour that we've got. Intimate publics, I think, is one of the last ones in Chapter 3, which is really significant. So it's kind of that cultural intimacy that people have when they're on social network sites. But there's another interesting way of thinking about that, and that's in terms of how we carefully construct strategies to share information with each other. So not just blindly broadcasting information to entire networks, but to also think about how we might create sub-networks within those larger groups to be sharing specific information between each other. A more intimate situation, similar to what we're doing right here. It's a more intimate kind of situation as to me just being on the internet and talking blindly to a lot of people. Then I think the key concepts that you need to think about in Chapter 4 are these things, or the areas around user-created content, so participation in user-created content. And now this is specifically important when you start to think about user involvement or user engagement strategies. So there's a few really nice areas that we could think about there. One of the big ones is Axel Bruns and prod usage. So this concept of audience as producer, and a couple of examples that we could think of there are slash fiction, where users or fans of particular genres might rewrite stories, basically, and take the characters out of stories, rewrite the plots, and then create new stories out of that. So Star Trek do that, Harry Potter fans do that. There's quite a few different varieties of that as well. So Wikipedia as well could be another interesting example of that, where we're relying on networks of expertise to create content in an online environment. And you can think about that in a way of no one person knows everything, but collectively we all know everything, or something like that. Crowdsourcing, citizen journalism, and activism are some of the bigger, I guess, angles on participation. Participatory culture in an online environment, and social media through social network sites enabling activities such as that. So I'm going to stop talking there, and I guess this is a good chance to throw open for questions. If people have got questions about some of that content, I've skipped through that really quickly because I just don't want to take up all the time. So over to you guys. What's questions, discussion points, etc.?
Hello, Jonathan. This is Albert. Can you hear me? My question is, can you give us more example of building up social capital? Because the idea of social capital sounds like too abstract for me. I think you've given a great example of, the guy, I missed his name, is using that prank to increase his influence and to build up his social capital, as well as promoting his music. Do you have any similar examples like that? Thank you.
Sure. So if we go back to the Wikipedia example from before, so someone who might emerge as a Wikipedian has high social capital, and the reason why is because they have a lot of respect and within that group of users, and that's built upon I guess, their past interactions and their contributions to the website and the platform. So they might be known as a contributor who has lots of expertise in particular areas and can also distribute that knowledge well amongst the users. So when it comes time to, if there's two users, one person who has high social capital and one person who has lower amounts of social capital, and they propose a similar kind of idea or concept or something, it's likely that the person or differing ideas, it's likely that the person with a higher social capital is their ideas will come to fruition within any given sort of social network site. Another type of example for that could be if we go back to community management again. This is an area which stems from that cultural intermediation space that we were talking about last week. So community managers are generally people that have very high social capital. So they have respect from their users. They've demonstrated that they have a lot of expertise and knowledge in these spaces. They communicate well between various groups of people. So they just have a very high level of respect in some kind of way, and they can convert that capital into other areas. So whether it's political, whether it's creatively, whatever it might be, they are able to function at a much higher level than others with lower social capital.
I was wanting to add
like
to...
a differentiation. Oh,
Sorry. You go, Holly.
thanks, man. I was just wondering if there was like a differentiation between like different types of social capital, like that Von Maur example that you had in your PowerPoint lecture presentation thing. Like he obviously accrued like a good following by doing something that was probably just like more like funny than anything else, or like entertaining, whereas like someone like Obama on social media would have like a slightly, obviously probably like a slightly different audience, but also like authority that stems from a different place. And I was just wondering if there's like a differentiation between those types of capital, or if there's like labels for them or whatever.
Yeah, excellent question. I don't know. Is the short answer? I don't know. How, like, they're both. It's both some kind of social capital which is trying to, I guess, gain popularity. If that's one way of thinking about it. So maybe it's a matter of some of it's like a popularity type of social capital, and others it's more of a political type of capital. Whereas if you think of Obama, he's kind of popular, but I guess it depends what he's going for, which I would assume he's going for like a more political type of edge, as opposed to someone like Von Maur who, is clearly going for popularity, which he then converts into an economical type of capital. So buy my records, essentially. I don't know. What do other people think when we're talking about social capital? Are there other sorts of measures of what that can be?
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in that. Can everyone hear me? I'm just paranoid no one can. Yep, good. That's a really interesting point. Like, who gets to decide what's legitimate on the internet? Like, so for instance, that's a really stark contrast. To be honest, when I was watching that that compilation of that dude, that rapper, for about 10 seconds I thought it was pretty amusing, and then very quickly it started to grate, and that's just because of my set of values. But obviously this guy had a huge following, and he had indeed social capital, at least online. But you compare it to somebody who's actually quote unquote achieved something, like, becomes the president of the United States. They've got a status that's very real and tangible, I guess, in the real world. Can they be compared? Are they the same? Like, what? I don't know. has there been much study into legitimacy of some of these things? Because I mean, that's the other thing too. I question like that rapper, like how long would his capital sustain itself? Like within like 30 seconds, that video started to get pretty old, you know. So I don't know. Just it's interesting to talk about. I'll mute now.
Okay, I'm unmuting now. So it's good. Like that's another aspect to the discussion. Perhaps is the temporality of it. So you might do something, and like bang, you've got your social capital goes through the roof. But how long is it going to stay like that for? And like you said, Anthony, you get sick of that Von Mar pretty quickly. It's like he's got one thing that took off, and he's a bit of a prankster or whatever, and after a while. But interesting how like it spurs on other people to mimic that kind of behavior. So then he's doing something that is driving other people to come and do this same similar thing. But what's interesting?
Well, maybe that's how you can measure when someone's got that capital is the amount of followers they have and people kind of emulating or joining it or whatever. That's the real measure, maybe.
Yeah.
Obviously, that can be quantified now with analytics and stuff and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's interesting. There was that video, that TED Talk that I put on there as well about how to start a movement, which is pretty interesting. Like there's lots of single people out there probably doing cool stuff, like, really interesting things. But then at the same time, how many people are jumping on that bandwagon? I don't know if there's 10 great...
Jonathan, people are trying to basically quantify it. When you use, I use Nation Builder a lot for work, and Nation Builder, for those that don't know it, is a website platform that integrates with Facebook and Twitter, and it's a database with the front end of a website, and most political parties, a lot of NGOs use it, and they actually have a thing where when someone likes their page or a post on Facebook, they get 1 point for social capital. When they reply to an email or they make a phone call, they get more social capital, so that people who are monitoring the database can actually see that person has a lot of social capital, so they must be one of our most keen people. We should be in contact with them, compared to someone who's got 5 social capital because they're sort of on the periphery, not as interested. So it is being used by companies, organizations for different purposes in a quantified way.
So there's a couple of questions that come out of that. Who decides the value of each of those actions? And then is it looked at to try and understand who a network influencer is, maybe? Is that how they're using that software?
Yes. So you can actually set different... So if your organization uses email really heavily and doesn't use social media, you can say that email gives you, one email can give you 100 social capital and Facebook gives you 1. So you can decide that on your one in order to influence your organization or political party or whatever it is. And how you use it then is different. It also has clout scores on there for those who understand what clout is, so that you can see the influence people have in their social media side if you want to use that.
Yeah, it's excellent. So what do other people think of that? Is that a useful measure? Because there's a whole other school of thought behind this. So I'm interested to hear what other people think about these sorts. So clout is one of those things that's come up and kind of fallen away, and there's a lot of other social media analytics programs that measure things in various ways, and the sophistication level kind of depends on how much you want to pay. But I'm interested to hear what you people think about whether you think these measures are useful, and if they are, in what way.
Well, they probably are pretty useful. Like, I mean, I think initially, without knowing too much about how deeply the analytics go, it's obviously a great way to see who's really active just through those scores. But, I mean, just because you shoot off a whole bunch of emails, I mean, it's arguable how effective or how worthwhile some of these actions are. Do you know what I mean? You could just send a bunch of white noise, really, and still ramp up that score and be seen in the eyes of that binary way of looking really important and like you have clout or something. But I don't know, then someone could just come up with one post that's really astute and effective and really, I don't know, useful. And if it, for some reason, falls through the cracks and not many people see it, then maybe it's not as worthy or something. I don't know. It seems like there's nuance there that could be missed. I don't know.
So I wonder, put your producer hat on for a second and think about some of these concepts from a social media designer perspective. So then how do you, if there's this thing called UCC and it's all about users or flipping the production model where audiences or users or fans are now creating content, and you're in the position of designing a campaign around this kind of thing, how do you do it? Like, what's some of the strategies that you might engage in to just thinking about the discussion we had about social capital, and then also about this kind of emerging area of, you know, what might be termed network influencers?
Well, I think we can encourage our users to participate in group activities and individual activities. They can choose freely which kind of activities they prefer, and in that case, they might, you know, provide some creative stuff in their own way.
Excellent point, Albert. So what I think you're trying to get at there is this concept of high barriers and low barriers. So if we think about a pretty broad variety of users that might be part of a design, like strategy or social media campaign or whatever, they all have varying degrees of skill or expertise. And so what we want to try and do is to address all different levels of people. And so what we might think about is building in high barriers and low barriers. And so a low barrier is something like send us an SMS, you know, those kinds of projects where there's, you know, it's all I've got to do is pick up my phone and go tick, 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 and you're off, through to something which might be high barrier, like produce a video, which obviously you need a whole lot of other expertise in that kind of space. So, you know, being able to use a camera and edit video in a non-linear editing system, and maybe sound design and those sorts of things. So that sort of comes back to your point there, Albert, about you know, it's kind of, we provide a few different ideas and we let people choose it. Would other people agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really important point. I come from a background of activism where, you know, you're trying to get someone to do something. So these sort of areas are really important, and you do use low and high barrier asks to sort of find what people's commitment levels, and in that way sort of their social capital towards you and in the larger group and larger organizations are.
In what kind of way? Like, can you give an example of perhaps some of the things you've done in the past?
Yeah, so a low barrier would be, you know, send your local MP an email about this issue. A slightly high barrier would be call your local MP about it, and then a much higher barrier is host a get-together of like-minded people in your area that you don't know, but then you guys can all come together and organise locally. So that's very high because you've got to meet people face-to-face that are strangers compared to just sending off an email or just making a quick phone call.
Yeah, it's good. That's an excellent example, and that's a good question, Anthony, too. How do you know when they've done these things? Like, you know, what viability do you have of someone making a phone call? It's a good point. Like, how do we then, is that our gig to then become producers in these spaces and kind of monitor or moderate this activity and collate it or something? Or or visible, whatever, viable, visible, whatever. Yeah. So what's the follow up? What's the next phase of the strategy, I guess?
Yeah, I mean,
I think.
is that what? Oh,
Sorry. Sorry, you say.
Oh. No, you go. You.
Okay, okay. Thank you. I think probably the next stage we have to come up with some incentive for our for the people to actually actively participate in our activities, because back in China, our company runs this social media campaign to raise awareness of a speech contest we hold every year. And the thing is that many people just are too busy with their study, especially considering the students' audience of our newspaper, and we have to provide a very attractive incentive, like an iPad as the prize, and there might be like tens of thousands of students who get our message, and we only provide like one iPad at the price, but the result of it is very good. We got like tons of positive feedback, and people are becoming interested in our activity. Thank you.
That's good. So you're kind of buying your participation in some regards. You could yeah. All right. So maybe if people in the room can think about their specific social media campaign that you're in the process of designing now, because one of the core elements of it is to think about that user participation strategy. So, does someone want to talk through with us? Just briefly tell us what your social media campaign is, and then how you are or given the conversation that we've just had now, how you are approaching user participation strategies.
All right, I guess I'll jump in. Okay, so yeah, look. So very quickly, I'm basically going to base mine around a musician that I know who's just he used to be in heaps of bands. He's now a solo artist, and he's just about to put out a new album. So it's all the timing is very good. He's also doing a bunch of shows, like live gigs, in the lead up to this launch. So the timing works well. And it's got obviously a real world application. So yeah, I guess it's kind of working as a promotional thing for him, promotional campaign. I've got a lot of ideas, but just after this conversation, I already feel like quite a few of them are quite one way. It's about us generating content and sharing it, which is pretty cool because some of the ideas could be pretty fun. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to have to think a little harder about how to, because it's a fine line, right? Like you don't want to, especially with the sort of demographic we're kind of aiming for, they aren't just because of the type of music. It's sort of rock and roll. It's for throwback rock and roll, so it's an older crowd, slightly older crowd. They're not hugely tech savvy, and I think they'd also be very suspicious of things appearing gimmicky. And I think also the person that I'm trying to promote probably might wonder, even though he's given me, complete control over the rest of this stuff. Like, yeah, it's a fine line. So, yeah, it's something to definitely think about. Yeah, over the next week or so.
So that's really interesting, and you raised some pretty good points there, Anthony, around gimmicky. Like you don't want it to be gimmicky. Everyone's got a gimmick at the moment, which I think clearly in this room, everyone's fairly well adapted to media language. So we can see straight through those sorts of things like, what, why would I want to do that? And, basically give you free advertising. So perhaps the way to think about these sorts of things is not so much, if you do this, then you'll get that. It's more about you just want people to communicate with you or about you. So so thinking more about it in terms of networks of networks. So it may not even be like, as obvious or as sort of drawing as, we'll give you an iPad if you do this for us. It could be something along the lines of, have you got a comment? You can use this hashtag as part of the conversation. It can be something really simple like that.
Yeah, getting people talking about the music and stuff and just getting some sort of discussion happening. If we can start that, then I think that'll obviously be a good indication that people are engaged and, this thing's kind of moving. So, I think that's probably a more useful way of looking at it.
Yeah, and especially in your context, Anthony, if you're talking about, it's a little bit of an older generation, they just don't care for that sort of thing. They don't want to take a selfie and hashtag it my great night out or whatever. You know what I mean? Like they're probably thinking about this in a completely different way. But at the same time, they still have social media through a social network site with another audience on the other side of it. And I guess that's probably the idea, is to do that kind of thing. Or there's another way to think about this, and that is taking this to an existing conversational space. So, Holly, did you have something to say then?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I was going to say it'd be interesting because you have like the audience of people who would go see like live music, but then you'd also have the audience of people in the industry, and by that also people who have live music venues. So like you would be able to communicate with the venue, who then would have like slightly more authority with their like regulars and stuff. So that would then translate into like a network online, but they might also start talking about it in the venue, or they could start using your promotional material, like our little logo or something, and putting that up in the venue, which is like, it's not really like online, but it's still, communication. So like, it's like bleeding outwards.
That's ace. Yeah, some really good ideas. Think about, I don't know, if anyone's been to a concert recently, like what were the sorts of things that were, and I mean a musical show, like, or a performance of some sort. How did was there an obvious kind of draw card for people to integrate their social media into the space, or was it more just, I'm at the Oxford Arts Factory, watching Jesus and the Mary Chain or something, something like that? What have people noticed? Like, take a selfie and hashtag. Well, I don't know. Like, what have people seen recently?
Well, look, I think I go to gigs, fairly regularly and stuff, but I'm probably part of that crowd that I was kind of describing. So I guess like what I've kind of witnessed isn't. It's just more people, they take photos. Definitely people take photos, and I'm assuming that they're putting them on Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. So that's definitely happening. I don't know about any other sort of, activity. I don't know. I'm not sure if people are doing like weird vines and stuff or tweeting it. I'm not sure. I don't know.
What I find really interesting in this space is around sporting events, how they've got a dedicated hashtag, and so to be part of the conversation, you have to use that hashtag. But I wonder sort of how it organically emerges. Like, are there other conversations happening around this one event or something that we don't necessarily understand, or how do you find that, discover it, and tap into it? Sorry, Albert, I think I cut you off then. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, it suddenly came upon me this famous pop singer in China, and he's labeled by netizens as the rain god because every time he came to Beijing to give a concert, it rained. So every time he came to Beijing to open his own concert, his own like publication PR staff would would interact with his fans to talk about this joke of him being a rain god and bringing a rainy weather to the capital, something like that. I think this kind of anecdote is kind of a great strategy they use to promote his brand.
So kind of, I guess that's a nice example there of networked publics, isn't it? Where you're taking, so the culture is influencing the online space, and the online space is influencing the culture in that kind of way. Where the rain god, here comes the rain god to perform, or whatever. That's good. That's an interesting way, and we saw a lot of that in the weekend just being with the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras that was on. So one of the ones that I remember seeing was the ANZ, which turned their hashtag into GayNZ. I thought that was pretty bad, actually. But, it's a good indicator of how people are working on sort of what's actually happening around them and trying to incorporate, well, in that case, piggyback their brand onto something else which is happening, which I imagine ANZ were probably one of the sponsors or something for the parade or whatnot. I'm not sure. That's a really interesting suggestion that Asanga's put on over there about, using the artist page on a particular social media platform to become more intimate with his followers. For example, ask people to pick a song for him to cover. That's excellent. So you're kind of integrating like the existing social media spaces and bringing them into the event or something. So it's kind of like who doesn't like the behind the scenes stuff of movies or videos or music or whatever. It's that really excellent way to bring people into the production or the event or whatever it might be. So you feel like you have an ownership over this particular thing. Is that just me, or do other people agree with that?
I agree. Hello. I would say though, however, that it's something that you could probably only do like a couple of times, because then if you're like doing it a lot, you kind of like, it's like probably something that you could only do once or twice over like a long period of time. But yeah, there is that kind of like, it's kind of like how Triple J does like a version kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think you can I think it's an awesome idea, and I'm definitely actually going to probably use it. But I think the risk you kind of run, there's two things. I think there's the fatigue that you're kind of speaking about, because it can kind of get especially I'm just always mindful too, because it's actually a real life thing, just of what this crowd, the perception of this, and it's also like you were just talking about that GayNZ one, like that's corny as hell, obviously, and for some events, I suppose, and some organisations, that can be, that can be endearing or whatever. But I don't know. For other things, it's it's not just talking about a musician who takes themselves half seriously. It's also like, for organisations that are pretty serious, like a political one, or I don't know, an NGO or something that's kind of doing important work. Some of these activities, you've kind of got to balance how you want it to reflect on the brand, I suppose. So yeah, that's something else I think everyone's got to consider when they're doing this stuff.
Excellent. Okay. So I'm just being very aware of time. Well, actually, I'm not being aware of time. I'm getting involved in a conversation, and I've just noticed that we've got 4 minutes left of the session, so we should probably start wrapping up and winding down a little bit now. So maybe if there's any questions around the assignment or the content or what are there any questions that people would like answered before we split tonight?
Yes, I have a question.
Mhm.
First of all, when do we need to post the 200 words by? And second, I don't know about anyone else, but I can't, like, there's no option for me to log on to the blog, so I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to, like, post my own post.
Yep. Okay. So for your first question, just as long as it's there by the end of the day of the presentation. So you guys are what, next Tuesday? So just as long as it's there by midnight next Tuesday, that's absolutely fine. And in terms of logging onto the blog, I can't work it out. I've had other people on the phone today saying that they can't get it in. So I think it's unanimous. No one can access the blog to actually log in. So leave it with me. I'll try and do something in the back end here to get you all as I can't work it out. I know something's happened with the CMS, so I'll look into it. I assumed it was working. So I'll look into it and try and get that working. If not, we'll do something else where you send it to me or something. I don't know, but just hang 10. I think it's a common problem for everyone, so I'll try and sort that out from my end.
Jonathan, so yeah, I've just got another question. So just so we're all certain, so next week it's just the 200 words, or is it like the whole brief that you're going to need from us?
No, just the 200 words, and then you've got your in-class presentation. Yeah.
So it's also the 6-minute chat about what you're doing and kind of how formal does that need to be? Do you need I guess maybe it's up to us, but is it like a PowerPoint presentation or what is it?
Yeah. So there's 5 slides, and you've got the format of that on our blog. If you go to, hang on, I'll just flick that back out to you again. If you go to here, you go to that link that I just sent in the chat box. You can see the first one there. Here's a social media campaign presentation example, which gives you the structure that I suggest you should follow. You have 6 minutes and 5 slides, and that's a nice map to try and get you through your campaign within 6 minutes, okay?
And just one more question. So on the 200 worder, that's just purely about our target audience.
That's it.
That's it? Okay.
Yeah. Just give me some background on who it is that you're talking to. So next week you have to the 200 words on the blog, the 6-minute presentation. You'll have to do some kind of PowerPoint to talk to during your presentation, and also your content calendar. Okay, and the content calendar will change. I sent out a link to that template for the content calendar, so just fill in the blanks basically. Any other questions?
With the content calendar, how long does it need to be? Like 1 month, 2 months?
So we're going for 3 months, but you'll only be concentrating heavily on the first 3 weeks. I just want to see that you're thinking forwardly for, beyond just the 1 or 2 months. 3 months.
Jonathan, I have a question.
Yep.
I have a question. And usually, how many events should we build up evolving around this campaign? Like 4 or 5 of them?
It depends on the platforms that you're using and the sorts of content that you're producing.
Yeah.
So,
you see, since Anthony mentioned that he's probably going to promote for his friend as a musician, and if you want to promote for a music album, probably there will be a limited channels for you to do that, right? Maybe only 3 or 4 of them. You can't expect to do like dozens of these events to promote one single album, right?
No, that's right. So I've given you a rough guide of, between 3 or 5 platforms to use. But it really depends on what you're doing. So, okay, let's go back to Anthony's case. You'd probably expect that he'd have, 4, maybe 5 platforms that he's working across.
I've already got. the guy's already got. He's set up a Facebook page and an Instagram, but haven't really been used at all. So I'm going to take those over, but there's a few more. Like we're going to get him on iTunes. We're going to experiment with some vines.
Cool.
Yeah, just there's a couple other little things. But
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not going to be. I can't really, unfortunately, fuck with too many crazy other platforms in this circumstance.
Okay, that's completely fine. Like, I think that's a good amount of platforms to be working across. So then what you'd need to do is to think through how many times it's appropriate to post on each of those platforms, like per week or per day. You know, you wouldn't do 4 updates per day on Facebook because people will bounce you. They don't want to have that much. You know, you maximum 1 per day on Facebook, maybe 3 or 4 across the week or something. You know, so you need to do a bit of research into that. What's the appropriate way to when and how many times on those sorts of platforms? Okay. Any last final questions? All right. Excellent. Well, thanks everyone.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for persisting with technology because it was. It's always going to go rough at the start, but you know, you guys got through that, so that's fantastic. Thank you. Any questions that arise during the week, just send them through and I'll try and email back. Otherwise, I'll see you back in our seminar room, LS, what are we, 110, I think it is, whatever it is, down in the Brennan lab next Tuesday night from 5 p.m. back to a normal time, 5 p.m., but only for 2 hours, giving your presentations. Okay? Bye, everyone. Have a good week.